Hi there, and good evening, and welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Online, you'll find us at JimBohannonShow.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimbo Talks. By this time, many thought that Dorian would have already struck Florida and would be heading across the state. Instead, Dorian continues to go along its pokey way, still pounding the Bahamas, and it appears that it will probably move up the Atlantic coast along Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. But again, these storms can change their minds. In the meantime, the immediate target, the Bahamas, and officials have reported there 5 dead on those islands. Residents in the southeast are watching Dorian closely as well as they prepare to be the next area hit hard by the storm. And Brian Todd has this update.
As Florida braces for Hurricane Dorian, the Bahamas are taking a direct hit. Grand Bahama Island bearing the brunt of more than 150-mile-per-hour winds and rain. For more than 36 hours, the life-threatening storm has been pummeling the Bahamas. Some Marsh Harbor, Bahamas residents trapped in homes that have been destroyed.
We can't go outside. We still stuck inside. We need help. Please, someone please come help us.
Here in Florida, more than 10 coastal counties are under a mandatory evacuation.
And it's important that residents heed those calls. Get out now while you have time, while there's fuel available, and you'll be safe on the roads.
With the storm approaching, medically dependent and special needs residents have to be moved too. Residents from more than 90 Florida assisted living facilities, hospitals, and nursing homes have already been relocated, according to the governor. Along the barrier islands, which could get the brunt of the storm as it hits, concerns that those who don't heed the mandatory evacuation orders could be cut off.
It's going to be difficult for us to get out to the barrier islands after the storm. We have a lot of partnership with the sheriff's office and our fire rescue, where we're able to bring assets out to them, but it's going to take some time. This is a slow-moving storm, so we're concerned that those folks might get isolated out there for a time until Dorian actually passes and it's safe for our first responders to get back out there to them.
Residents in the town of Stewart are particularly vulnerable to storm surge and flooding. Many live in low-lying neighborhoods near 2 rivers and a canal. Chris Garrigus is closing up his house right by a canal and getting out.
Flooding is the main concern for sure. They release Lake Okeechobee and then it comes up, and then if this thing hits on high tide, we're screwed.
So, to make sure that you are not in that similar circumstance, why stay tuned to this station, because we'll do what we can to pass along important information. FEMA, by the way, says it continues to reassess where it should stage supplies and personnel as the storm track changes. At last check, FEMA was pulling significant resources from Florida up to North Carolina after recalling personnel sent last week to Puerto Rico. So, versatility and adaptability are the watchwords here in handling a storm like this. They don't have a particular path that they follow. Sometimes they seem to have a mind of their own. 1-866-50-JIMBO, our number, 1-866-505-4626. And we're joined now by Scott Mager, a nationally known attorney, author, natural disaster insurance expert, and one of the founding contributing members of the Storm Help Team. Good evening, Scott.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. First of all, I think we should probably know there's a website for this group, stormhelpteam.org. What is that?
It's a storm website that gives you resources, how-to videos, and information about how you can understand your insurance policy and to understand how to make a claim after a storm.
All right, that's pretty important stuff. That there is such a resource, I think, could refer us back to a call made in our previous hour from Gary in Meridian, Mississippi. And Gary asked, given the willingness of all kinds of places like churches, for example, schools, who knows what all, to provide something in the way of an evacuation center, is there any kind of a clearinghouse where these groups can volunteer in advance, say we're the church of whatever in somethingville, and we think we can take in as many as let's say 30 30 people or something like this, and we'd like to be on your list to have people sit here if the need arose. Is there such a clearinghouse? And if not, it would seem like maybe stormhelpteam.org would be an ideal place for it.
I agree. I think there isn't a resource out there that allows people to go online and find a place to go. There are various state-based websites, like if you're in Florida and you go to disasterrecovery.org, or if you go to Florida Disaster, their main website, they do have specific resources when schools and churches and other things are open. So it's always very important to pay attention to your particular state's state-based website, because they'll have tremendous resources at each one of those.
Well, that's an encouraging thing to know. Now then, obviously there is always the possibility of any number of litigations to take place following a storm. In terms of being a lawyer and or natural disaster insurance expert, let's take a look at what happens after a storm when the law and the bureaucracy get involved. What are some of the problems which may arise?
Well, you want to preserve certain things before a storm in order to set up a proper insurance claim after the storm. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's very important for you, if you think that you're going to be hit by a storm or even a bad rain event, to take pictures of all of your property inside and out to make sure you preserve that property, so that when you make the claim, you don't have an insurance company claiming that, hey, you didn't have this damage documented, and this might have been a prior problem. You might have already had a damaged roof or damaged windows, or your carpet might have already been ruined. So it's really important for you to make sure that before the claim is made, you've taken a snapshot, if you will, literally and figuratively, of your entire property and surroundings, including your contents, art, TVs, anything that would be documented in a way that you could show the insurance company that you have a valid claim. Then once the storm has passed, you want to do the same sort of thing. And this applies whether or not you have a rain event, whether or not you have a hailstorm, or whether you have an actual hurricane. You want to make sure that you've documented before, and then afterward you take pictures again, and then you can show, hey, 3 days before the storm, I didn't have window damage, and now I do. 3 days before the storm, I did not have any problems with my carpet, or I didn't have any flooded areas, and now I do. And this way, when you make your claim to the insurance company, it becomes easier and clearer to them that you actually have a valid claim. And the important thing about that is to make sure that you know what your coverages are, and that you call the insurance company and make your claim immediately, because the sooner that you make a claim, the sooner that the insurance company's duty to investigate and to timely pay your claim begins. So if I wait, and I wait days or weeks before I make a claim, then I'm going to be behind hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, or in some cases millions of people who have made their claim in a timely way right afterward. So it's very important at the very beginning to make sure we have proof of a good claim, and that we call the insurance company and we make the claim. Then what happens is the insurance company will then assign an adjuster to you, and they will come out and inspect the property. And so you want to be prepared for that. And what do I mean by that? It's very important for you to have all of the items that you think are damaged. Let's say you have some carpet that's damaged, and you have a sofa, and you have a flood that occurred, and you have some damage to your roof. So you want to organize those pictures and that inspection in such a way so when they come out, you point out to them all the damages you see, and then you walk around and you tell these experts, or show me what other damages you see, because they're going to go and look at your roof, they're going to go into your attic, they may look into your garage and other places where you have damage. If you have a business, it may be certain areas of your business. But that inspection sets forth the basis for how the insurance company begins that investigation, so that you are in a better position to make a very powerful claim that is more likely to be paid.
Fair enough. And more to come. Our number, 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Scott Mager, our guest, is an attorney, author, natural disaster insurance expert, and one of the founding contributing members of stormhelpteam.org. 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 We're looking at Dorian, which is taking its own sweet time about going wherever it decides to finally go. 1-866-50-JIMBO. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show. 1-866-50-JIMBO. Our number, 1-866-505-4626. We're talking about Hurricane Dorian, and the hurricane remains stationary as it continues to pummel Grand Bahama Island. As of 10:50 Eastern Time this past evening, which is not that long ago, about half an hour as we speak live, the center was about 30 miles northeast of Freeport, Grand Bahama Island. It has barely budged from that position all day long, and the Bahamas were taking quite a pounding. The wind has lessened, but consider this, it has lessened to 130 miles an hour, down from 140 earlier in the evening. And of course, at one point, you had winds that were hitting above 200 miles an hour. But again, that's not much of a lessening. We're talking with Scott Mager, nationally known attorney, author, natural disaster insurance expert, one of the founding contributing members of stormhelpteam.org. We look at the aftermath of such storms. We have had, of course, hurricanes for quite a while. We've had modern disaster preparedness techniques. We've got, of course, satellite delivered communications and the internet. You would think we would have this down to a science by now, Scott, but if you had to look at how we respond to disasters and nitpick, what would you say? You ought to change this, and you ought to change what?
I think there's a number of things that can be done. I think, when you think about the staging of, like, let's take Florida, for example. Florida Power and Light will stage, thousands of workers and trucks in various areas, or FEMA will stage people. A lot of times they don't realize that there's other resources that need to be staged too, such as loads of water and other supplies and supplemental supplies that usually run out. These types of situations we see in the many storms I've been involved with over decades of doing this. I can tell you that these kinds of problems tend to repeat themselves. I think this time, the latest government under Trump and stuff has done a much better job of stationing federal resources to make them more available more quickly than, say, past campaigns have. But the bottom line is that we need to be sensitive to the fact that there are a lot more problems that are beyond just getting the power back on, and the resources of being able to help people is very, very important to stage that. Another thing is the education of what do we do with people who don't have access to power? They don't have access to phone lines. As we set up more wireless communications, portable Wi-Fi stations, other types of things, you can get communications back to normal sooner, and that allows for people to get stuff done, to communicate with the insurance companies, to communicate with their loved ones in a faster and more quick rate. Those are some of the most basic things that can be improved over the system. But the most important thing from the standpoint of recovery that I've seen is there is a remarkable slowness in the payment of insurance claims. I mean, there should not be the need for us to file thousands or tens of thousands of lawsuits against insurance companies because they don't pay claims in a timely basis. If you take just the last hurricane, for example, Hurricane Michael, which was a Category 5 storm, that is a major hurricane. That is the largest category storm you can have. And you have 10, 11 months later, you still have thousands and thousands of people that haven't been paid their claims, even though they don't have roofs over their head. Some of them are living in RVs and in tents in their backyard. And there's just no incentive for the insurance companies to pay absent lawsuits and other types of things. So I think that the important thing to tell people who are, in the wave of a storm or in the wave of future storms is that the most important and significant thing you can do is to be aggressive with your claim, to document it well, to call the insurance company and keep calling the insurance company, and to make sure that your repairs are really, really documented in a way with experts. That is fantastic, and I think that will be a tremendous help to you.
It would certainly be a great help, and I hope everyone takes that to heart, to quickly file and be prepared to file quickly. Having said that, allowing people to live in such circumstances over what amounts to a financial response, I understand that insurance companies are businesses and that businesses have to make a profit, et cetera, and so on. But I have to tell you, that's a pretty lame excuse. It really is.
It is indeed, and it's very frustrating. I can tell you from a person who is extremely passionate about helping victims of the storm, and I can tell you from handling this for decades and seeing tens of storms go by, it is very frustrating when you have demonstrative proof of damage to your home or to your business, and you can't get the insurance company to pay, or they make up excuses, or they pay you in part and then they close the claim, and then you're busy trying to chase them down, and you don't know that you can hire a lawyer, and or you don't know how much a lawyer's going to cost, and you don't realize that a lawyer may be free because the insurance company may be required to pay them. All of a sudden, that process slows down. You don't know what to do. You can't understand your insurance policy because it's one page of inclusions and then 70 pages of exclusions. And you need a compass, a map, and a decoder ring in order to understand what your coverage is. And so when you add those things together, it creates just a recipe for delay and misfortune.
Yeah, again, I'll put it this way. It would be better for the insurance companies if they voluntarily address this before Congress drags them kicking and screaming into a law that might be even worse than anything they voluntarily decided to do. Just my advice to the insurance company there.
Well, there's a lot of lobbies that support the insurance companies, so it's very hard. And again, I don't want to overgeneralize. There are a lot of insurance companies that do pay a lot of the claims, but they don't pay all the claims. And the frustrating thing for me, having handled thousands and thousands of these claims, is to tell you that it is really, really frustrating when the insurance companies don't pay and don't feel that there's any pressure for them to pay. Now, in Florida, for example, we have a statute, for example, that penalizes the insurance company for not paying. So if they don't pay, they have to pay the amount of money, plus they have to pay all of your attorney's fees, so you end up with a free lawyer, plus they may have to pay double or triple the amount of damages if they unreasonably delay in payment. Not every state has those kinds of statutes, and so Florida's taken a stand, and that has been helpful to a lot of consumers. It still creates delays, but there's more of a motivation to pay in a timely way. We've already been victimized by the storm. We don't need to be victimized again by the insurance company. So I hope that people, can heed this warning and will document their claims and be aggressive with the pursuit of them. Exactly.
And again, while you wait for reform, you may have a problem before reform arrives. And so keep in mind what else Scott Mager just had to say. Be sure that you have a documentation, a video documentation, and of course, obviously, you should probably email that to a trusted friend or relative in case your cell phone gets lost or something, whatever, the usual drill with things digital. And then be prepared to quickly file a comparison immediately thereafter. That would be of great help. We'll continue with more, including your calls at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626 on the Jim Bohannon Show as we ride through Dorian, which is taking its time, but it's going somewhere. We'll try to follow it. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. We're looking at Hurricane Dorian, which is just slow. There's no question about it. It is slow. It's been deadly in the Bahamas. it has yet to really do much along the Florida coast, although it seems headed in that direction. We thought that the Florida coast would be being buffeted by this hour, and that's not really the case. No, you can see the increased surf and the like, but it's been hanging around the Bahamas for quite some time now. We're talking to attorney and disaster insurance expert Scott Mager, and he is also one of the contributing members of the group stormhelpteam.org, 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626, to Anthony in Auburn, New York. Hello, Anthony.
Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. High and dry.
That's good.
Yeah.
I hope to stay that way.
Yeah.
I'm born in 43. I'm 76 now, and when I was a kid, I recall living through in central New York, if you could believe it, Syracuse, we went that far inland, Hurricane Hazel. And it was a horrible night. I'll never forget seeing utility poles shake like rubber bands and snap, and we had old neighborhoods with big trees that just twisted out. Anyway, the following morning, I cut through the yard to get over to my grandma's house to see how she fared through it. And there was a lot of commotion out front. By the time I got there, it was the first time in my life I saw two people die. One woman was in a car with wires down. The fire department's there yelling at her to not to get out, not to get out. I think her tires were burning. I don't know how she got in that situation. And lo and behold, she got out. And that sound of the electricity, that was horrible for me to see that as a kid.
Yeah.
And a lineman was working in front of Grandma's house, and he went up the pole real fast, and there was a bare wire, and they hit him right across the nose. And he popped off of that utility pole like he was shot out of a cannon and landed in front of me. It was a horrible experience.
Wow. That, I'm sure that, how old were you at that time, Anthony?
I don't know when Hurricane Hazel hit. I know it was probably in the early 50s, mid-50s. I was born in 43. I'm a little kid, worried about Grandma. My mother was upset that I crossed through the back yards of her street with trees and wires still live down. There were live wires down everywhere, and I had sense enough certainly not to step on one. And it was just, during the night, it was a horrible experience. I think they may have been 90 to 100 mile an hour winds by the time it hit Syracuse.
Yeah. Something to keep in mind, again, to emphasize what was said earlier tonight, that you really can't evacuate too far away from a storm because you just don't know. Yes, land is debilitating to a major storm, but it doesn't always totally destroy one for quite some time. And I can recall, for example, I think it was Camille, which hit the Washington, D.C. area hard, but it did so by traveling from the Gulf of Mexico, and not the usual way off of the Chesapeake Bay. I mean, they can last, and Scott Mager, you know that, I'm sure, more than most people do.
About it, the storms, depending on where they hit and where they travel, can last a long time. We all know about Katrina coming across Florida and then going up the coast into New Orleans and other places, and there are storms that, Irma, that went up the entire, Florida coast. So there are storms that will do substantial damage. This particular storm is horrific for the Bahamas because it is literally stationary, and it has been there for quite some time, and it is an enormous amount of time for a storm to be in one place. And you're talking about one of the most serious storms in the history of storms. I mean, there were winds that were gusting over 200 miles an hour just a day and a half ago, and it's still there at 130 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts that are probably going to 150, 160 miles an hour. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is, and again, the unpredictable nature. There have, of course, in the past been attempts to try and influence hurricanes. There was, I know at one point, this was probably 40 or 50 years ago, there was an effort made at cloud seeding a hurricane. This was off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, and of course these things are absolutely huge. They did drop a lot of the the silver iodide crystals, the seeding crystals into it. I don't know that anybody ever knew for a fact that this was a cause and effect situation, but after being seeded, the storm, which I think they hoped that it would help the storm dissipate. The storm did not dissipate, but it did make a sharp left turn and head straight for Jacksonville. That was the end of trying to seed the Hurricane I. There have been talks, nothing more than talks, but talks of using nuclear weapons on hurricanes. That has gone nowhere for a couple of major reasons. The most important, of course, being radiation, which, of course, would be spread all over the huge area. And, of course, the other is that even a large hydrogen bomb is still a fraction of the power of a hurricane. We just have no concept of how big these things are. So, in terms of doing anything about them, I think, Scott Mager, that's pretty much at a dead end right now.
Yep. Nature has its own mind, and the best things we can do is to prepare for the storm, do the right things to document your claims, and then after the storm, make sure that you call your insurance company and you document your claim and you pursue them so that you get all the money that you're entitled to under your insurance contract.
Yeah. Stay with us, so we have more to come. Our guest again, Scott Mager, an attorney, natural disaster insurance expert, one of the founding contributing members of stormhelpteam.org, as we do what we can to help you make it through a pretty tough storm out there, loitering, lingering, threatening the eastern coast of the United States. 1-866-50-JIMBO, our number, 1-866-505-4626. We'll be back on The Bohannon Show in just a moment. The Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Attorney and natural disaster insurance expert Scott Mager is our guest. I'm not sure that I have a full grasp of what all is in fact insurable. What kinds of disasters, natural disasters, are in fact things that can be insured? For example, I build a home in the 9th Ward of New Orleans that gets flooded every year, it seems like. Is there an insurance company that will cover me for that? Or there are some people sometimes along the Mississippi River who do the same thing. And you have to ask yourself, what kind of premiums would it take for that to be worthwhile?
Well, when it comes to flood insurance, usually that is covered by what's called the National Flood Insurance Program. And that's a little different than your typical homeowners or business coverage. And so what you want to do in those situations, they pool the risk by having a national insurance plan, and then what happens is insurance companies will then participate in that particular plan. So what you probably want to do is to be aware of your particular area and what you need for insurance for your particular needs. Now, depending upon the type of property you have and what you want, you can almost insure against anything, whether it's an earthquake or a windstorm or a tornado or any kind of natural event is usually covered. And it just depends upon how much coverage you get and the type of coverage you get. So you can get coverage for your home, like your structure. You could get coverage for your shed or your barn or your pool. That's a different kind of coverage. You can get coverage for what's inside your house, called the contents. And you can get coverage for additional living expenses. For example, when you have to move out of your home while it's being fixed, or if you have rental property and it can't be rented because of a storm event. So depending on the type of coverage and how much coverage you have, you'll know then, how you can best insure your property against loss.
1-866-50-JIMBO, as we take a call from Doug, who calls in from Humboldt County, California, where I'm not sure what all your natural disasters tend to be there, wildfires or earthquakes, but at least not hurricanes. Doug, good evening.
Yeah, well, we do have earthquakes and floods.
Yeah.
The last big flood was in 1964. Hey, Jim, first-time caller, and I just wanted to bring up the fact that no major media outlet has reported this year on the dearth of hurricane activity, both in the Atlantic and the eastern equatorial, or the eastern northern Pacific areas. And there's a reason why hurricane activity is down.
Okay.
Well, Dr. William Gray, who is the professor emeritus of the Colorado State University School of Atmospheric Science, observed that when there are what are called La Nina conditions along the equatorial eastern Pacific Ocean, the La Nina condition is when you have cooler surface waters along the equator, and those cooler surface temperatures actually create winds that tend towards the northeast across the Caribbean. And if you look at the geosatellite animation of the current hurricane, you'll see these winds, these high cloud movements going from the southwest to the northeast. And those winds create a shear that cut down the counterclockwise motion of the hurricane. And no one has brought this up.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I had not heard about it. Again, perhaps our guest knows something about this. Scott Mager, you heard of anything like that?
Sure. There are different. There's El Nino and El Nino. There are different types of environments that are conducive to more or less storms. But the reality is that we're not going to stop the storms from coming. The things that we need to do as citizens is to prepare appropriately to make sure we have the right insurance coverage, and then if there is an event, that we make sure we document and process our claim properly.
Fair enough. Again, documentation, always a key. And Doug, thank you for sharing that information as well tonight. 1-866-50-JIMBO, our number, 1-866-505-4626. As an attorney and an insurance expert, you, I'm sure, have seen both sides of this circumstance. Which side is winning, if you will, between the lawyers and the insurance companies?
No doubt that the insurance companies are winning. There's no doubt about that. It's just that consumers are getting better and smarter because they're learning some of the techniques that people like us are sharing to help all of the citizens just be better armed about recovering sooner and getting all the money that you're entitled to under an insurance contract. You should get all the money that you're entitled to. You shouldn't get $1 more, but you also shouldn't get $1 less. And the importance of you properly documenting your claim is directly correlative to how successful you're going to be in recovering that amount of money.
Fair enough. 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. More calls for our guest, Scott Mager, on The Bohannon Show as we track Dorian. Back in a moment. Back to the Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO. Attorney and insurance expert, disaster insurance expert, Scott Mager, our guest. Mark calls in from Long Island, New York. You've seen a few canes over the years, Mark. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to know, because I definitely haven't seen a hurricane. First of all, this guest is phenomenal. I love him. Second, if a hurricane happens to me again, how soon can I sue the insurance company? Because they're never giving you what you need, ever.
The answer is you can literally sue them the day after you make a claim. The reality is what you should do, and the best thing to do, is to document your claim well by taking the photographs before and after, to send a letter to the insurance company. Dear insurance company, please find and enclose a copy of all the pictures of my damage. Here's a contractor's estimate that says that I'm entitled to $46,000. Please pay me within 2 days, or I'll see you in court. Love and kisses, you. And once you do that, if they don't respond in 2 days, you simply write them another letter and say, why haven't you responded? Insurance companies have a duty to promptly investigate. Now, that's defined as up to about 30 days, typically in most states. But the key is, if you stay on top of them, they're going to realize that you're a thorn in their side, and they're going to want to process your claim in a fast way. The most important thing about this is to document exactly what it is that your damage is, to continually write them, whether it's every day or every other day. And if they don't respond, to immediately seek legal help and have a lawyer get involved. Because I'm telling you from being on the insurance company side, that when we saw that people had well-documented claims, we did not want to waste money defending litigation and then have to pay the entire amount of money. So it's a great question, and thanks for the call in, but I can't emphasize enough that you need to get smart counsel helping to educate you with whatever you need.
All right, very good. Now, this is a complicated topic and one on which certainly I'm no expert, so I'd like you to cover, if you would, Scott, anything that I didn't bring up that needs to be emphasized here.
Well, I would tell you that, as I just mentioned in the last answer, it's really important for those of you that do suffer any damage to make sure that you have a good contractor's estimate that details out all of the harm, all of the damages, the roof, the window, the doors, all of your damages that you have. Keep all your receipts if you have to buy extra food or you have to move out or stay in a hotel. Document all those things. Regularly write to the insurance companies. If you're not sure what kind of damage you have, make sure you get a qualified contractor or an engineer or an expert out to your property to make sure they've gone and documented and looked, because a lot of times they'll find moisture behind the walls, or they'll find damages that you as a regular person wouldn't know because you're not trained to look for some of those damages. For example, the most common damages that people don't find out about or don't realize are window damages. That is, windows don't break, but they have damage to them, and you can't tell that until 6 or 8 months later when your windows start fogging up or they're not working properly, and then you go to the insurance company and they say, well, that's not related to the storm. So it's important to make sure you get the right experts that are going to help you do what you need to do. And I think if you do that, you'll be in a much better position than before this show started.
I wonder how other countries do this kind of thing. Are there things we could learn from other countries about handling disaster coverage?
I actually think that the United States is at the forefront of insurance coverage and insurance payment. I just think that most of the biggest problems about insurance and insurance coverage is that people just don't know. They don't understand what's in their policy. They don't know what to do after a storm because nobody's educating them. And there's very few people like myself that understand insurance policies, so there isn't a lot of people out there to tell you, well, here's what you need to do and here's how to best document your claim.
The stormhelpteam.org website, what all does one find there?
You can find all kinds of resources like videos on how to make a FEMA claim, or videos on that's the Federal Emergency Management Association, or you can find out information on how to make your own claim. You can see free videos. You can contact us if you want and ask us questions for free. We don't charge anything for questions, and you can get a lot of information and resources by reaching out to that site and then asking any questions you want. If you want to learn about insurance, if you want to learn what kind of coverage you should get, if you want a referral to a good insurance agent, I mean, we're here to be a resource to people to help and empower them so they can maximize their knowledge and maximize their recovery.
Important lessons and things that the people should keep in mind, obviously. And is there any particular company that provides exceptionally good insurance coverage in this sort of insurance?
I would say it depends upon the particular state, but the most important thing is to make sure that when you get insurance coverage that you look at what is being covered. You look at what it is that's in your house or your business that you need covered. If you don't have a fence, you don't need coverage for fences. If you don't have a pool, you don't need coverage for pools. You have to make sure that you look at your coverage and you make sure your insurance agent gives you the exact coverage you need.
Fair enough. Stay on the line. We'll speak briefly off air. Scott Mager, a nationally known attorney, author, natural disaster insurance expert, and one of the founding contributing members of the group Storm Help Team. Their website is their name, stormhelpteam.org, stormhelpteam.org. We will continue our coverage of Dorian, loitering off the coast of Florida, but mostly still banging away at the Bahamas. And when will this storm finally move away? I'm Jim Bohannon on Westwood One.